Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome to Your Forest. I'm Matthew Christoph, reporting from my basement. I'm calling it the dad cave the last 2 months, so I'm sure a lot of you are in the same situation. Oh, probably all of you. Right, this is a global pandemic. I forgot. And I know personally, at least, it's been pretty confusing the last little while to know what you can and can't do, what you should and shouldn't do when it comes to going outside. I thought I'd do what I could to try and clear that up, at least around, hunting and fishing and that kind of stuff. I have a guy that I know, Todd Zimmerling, from the Alberta Conservation Association. And he's been on the podcast before. Awesome guy, really knows his stuff. And they've been working hard to try and clear up that line about what can and can't you do to get outside and appreciate nature's plentiful bounty and just, go about your regular life as much as possible. And I know for myself, at least, as well as a lot of people out there, it's so extremely important to get outside and just, get out of the house. So I thought I'd try and clear that up. How can we go outside and appreciate the outdoors and its plentiful bounty while protecting the public health and ourselves? Is it okay to go hunting and fishing, hiking, that kind of stuff? Can I go outside with my friends and family? Or how should I protect myself, social distancing and all that kind of stuff? What about traveling? Should I be traveling to go hunting and fishing and hiking and that kind of thing? Maybe not. Maybe I should be staying more local. You know what I mean? You don't want to be spreading things around unknowingly. So I thought we would start to try to answer some of those questions talking to Todd. So that'll be a good conversation. He's the first person we're talking to today. Some other things I was thinking about. How about the future of sustainability as it relates to COVID-19? More specifically, the students. The ones that are going to make up the next generation of environmental professionals. How are they affected because of this thing? How has post-secondary been affected? How did they figure out testing? How do you teach? How do you make sure that people don't fall behind because their circumstance is more complicated than other people's circumstance? What does COVID-19 mean for the future of post-secondary? On the other side of this thing, how do all these lessons learned during this time change the way we do things on the other side of it? These are all things that the university had to think about and try to force into a solution to this huge problem that they have. That's all universities, all schools, all colleges. They all had to try and sort this out. And I spoke with Ellen Macdonald from the University of Alberta to try and sort that out. She is a professor of forest ecology there and also the chair of renewable resources at that university. So she's been on the podcast before, an amazing person. I love talking to her. And it was a good conversation. Try and clear up some of these questions that people have about how this pandemic is impacting the natural resources world. So sponsors for this episode, same three. West Fraser is a sponsor for 2020, and I could not thank them enough for their support. Without it wouldn't be possible. Greenlink Forestry is also a sponsor. They are also doing good work in the forest industry, and again, wouldn't be possible without them. Third and final sponsor is Damaged Timber. Damaged Timber was an apparel company out of Edmonton, Alberta, still selling hats and that kind of stuff, but they're moving towards more of his passion, which is woodworking. And he's selling these super unique, really interesting cutting boards and charcuterie boards and stuff like that, all made from wildfire burnt wood. So he's going out into wildfires in Alberta, collecting that wood and turning that into stuff you can put on your kitchen counter. It is so cool. I just love the idea. It's so awesome. Definitely check them out. Damagedtimber.com. Put in Your Forest 10 at checkout to get 10% off. And without any further messing around, let's dive into it. How can we get outside and what's going on with learning? Here we go. Getting people outside during this pandemic, right? it's been confusing. It's been challenging. There's a lot of fear out there, justly so, right? People don't want to get sick. They don't want to get their loved ones sick. And there's some conflicting information out there, and I'm not expecting you to have the answers to that. The epidemiologists are talking about, but what has the ACA gathered around getting people outside, and like what is okay and what isn't okay? Because I mean, I know I talk to a lot of my family and friends, and for them, and even for myself, sometimes even just going for a walk at a park can be stressful because you don't know, people are getting a little too close, and you hear all kinds of things. So what have you guys done to try and clarify, what's ethical?
Well, I mean, first of all, I agree 100%. It has been extremely confusing, and I think some slightly conflicting messaging coming from federal, provincial, municipal authorities as to not only what is or isn't legally allowed, but what is or isn't recommended one way or the other. Certainly, that everyone is stressing that if you don't need to go out, stay at home. But I think if you listen to when they're stressing that, generally, I believe what they're talking about is if you don't need to go out to a crowded area, you don't need to go out to a store, then don't stay at home. There's no need to do that. Don't go visiting family, those kinds of things. Because those same people are also stressing that getting outside is good for your mental well-being, good for your health overall. And so when you're doing it, you do it appropriately, follow the recommendations. So we've followed the lead of Alberta Health Services, and to be honest, followed the conversations, the interviews we've heard with Alberta Minister Nixon regarding getting outside and enjoying the outdoors, but doing it in a way that protects yourself and protects others. So we're encouraging people to get out. We know we've got snow goose hunting that has opened up now in the province. We've got a number of lakes that are starting to open up. The sun, at least in the Edmonton area, finally is starting to warm things up. So we might actually get to see some open water eventually. It's been a long time coming, but there will be lakes available to fish at. But if you're going to do that, we are recommending to people, obviously, we've got signs at all of our fishing locations to stay at least one fishing rod length away, so you're 2 meters. And ensure that
that's a good visual.
Yeah, and that's what we've put up on our signs, so that there's something that people can. You can touch someone else with a fishing rod, you're way too close. Now, to be honest, under normal circumstances, I would say you probably stand too close just for But this is this is now for your health. Make sure you're not standing any closer than that, and just to make sure that if you're going out, you're you're going to that spot, you're enjoying your day, and you're coming back. You're not stopping in and buying extra groceries or anything like that, or having any more interactions with people than what is necessary in order to enjoy yourself with your family.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I've heard some, there's a lot of information out there, and I've heard a few, I think virologists talking about, the moisture particles or whatever, right, from your breath and talking and that kind of stuff, and how trying to visualize that for people so they understand where the risk is, and putting 2 meters as a minimum, right? Like that's a minimum buffer. One visual that I heard that was really interesting to me was imagine everyone's a smoker and you have to stay away from their smoke bubble, because if someone's walking and they're having a cigarette, that smoke is going to stay in the air behind them for a little while, right? And that's apparently, it's not unreasonable to say that that's similar to what's going on with COVID, or could be, right? So it's interesting that to try and manage that and try and understand those visuals. I think that's been the big thing, is putting these visuals out so people can clearly identify which hazards to steer away from, right? So that fishing rod length is perfect.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it's hard for anybody to visualize what we're talking about here, and the information is constantly changing because it's a new virus, it's new issues, new stuff is coming up all the time. But yeah, the 2 meters is a minimum. You should be getting further away. And to be honest, most people, you're going to enjoy your fishing trip a lot more if you're a lot further than 2 meters from the next guy, especially if you got your family there.
Yeah.
You're going to want some room.
Yeah.
This is Alberta, where people are used to having space. So just make sure we do that. And I don't see the issue actually being physically when people are fishing. I do believe in most cases people will space themselves out. The issue really will be around things like docks. Some locations have docks for people to fish off of. There's going to be cases where you're going to have to say, well, I can't go stand at a dock because there's 2 other people already there, and there's no physical way of me being there and not being too close to them. If we get our boat launches open up here, when it comes time to launch the boat, how are you going to be able to do that without standing too close to everybody else around you or them standing too close to you? And so those are things we're really going to have to look closely at. And to be honest, if we as the anglers can't figure out how to do it appropriately, then we'll end up probably losing the opportunity to do it. And that has happened in some other jurisdictions. So we really have to be careful that we are following the recommendations of Alberta Health Services.
That's just it, right? Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We have to be careful that people aren't looking for justification for their actions, right? They're not looking for loopholes. This isn't a game, right? This isn't a game. Don't look for loopholes. Don't try to justify what you're doing. Just try to, if you have to justify it, then we probably shouldn't be doing it.
As we normally do in society, hindsight will be 20/20. So we'll have plenty of time to blame everybody for what they did or didn't do after the fact. So at this point, let's just do what we're being asked to do, and we can complain later.
Yeah, exactly. That's just it. Yeah, I was thinking about like you were saying, the waterfowl season's opened up now, and I imagine there's a lot of people that they have their family or their friends that they always get together and do that hunting, and even that I would assume it doesn't have to end, but it definitely can't be sharing trucks. I would assume you have to be staying at least 2 meters apart, if not more. Your dog probably can't be swerving in and out of you. It's things everyone has to be. I think we can be outside. We just have to be thinking about this constantly while we are outside, right?
Oh, there's no doubt. Yeah, it makes the whole process a lot more complicated than it normally would be, for sure. I'm hoping to get out this weekend, and I'll be with my family, my wife, my son, my daughter, my dad. But my wife and daughter live in the same household, but my son doesn't, and neither does my father. So we might end up having to take 3 different vehicles out to the same location, which sounds ridiculous. But that is, that's what we're going to end up doing if we're going to follow the recommendations. Then when it comes time to setting up the decoys themselves, everybody will be given their own, everybody will take a separate bag from the trailer and go set up their own set of decoys, as opposed to what we normally do is, walk along together and chat while you're setting up decoys and make it a much more social event. But at least, the one upside to spring snow goose hunting is you generally can lay blinds out 2 meters or more apart without too much trouble, and then you can still chat while you're laying in your blind waiting for the geese to come, and that should work out well, at least give us an opportunity to be outside.
Yeah, we're all going to have to make sacrifices, and if people can still get outside and go hunting and fishing, then that's going to be a huge help, I think, to people's mental health and their feeling of community too, right? If you can be far enough away, 2 to 4 meters away from someone and still be talking while you're fishing or while you're goose hunting or whatever, that's going to play a big role in just helping your whole family out, making sure that your mental health is okay and that you can try to feel some semblance of normalcy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's an interesting thing. I hope, I hope this doesn't go on we don't know how long it's going to go on. I'm not going to ask you to speculate on that, but I anticipate that this goes on to, let's just assume that this goes on into the fall hunting season and that kind of stuff. And that hunting season is still open. What kind of steps do you think people should be taking to, again, not just follow the guidelines, not just do what's legal, but doing what's ethical, doing what's right, and not looking for loopholes or justifications behind some of the activity, trying to go out and do hunting responsibly and respectively during this whole pandemic, right? And being helpful, not adding to the problem.
Well, I think, in a lot of cases, if we're talking about it impacting the fall hunting season, it's going to affect a lot of people's normal hunting, where they would normally go hunting. A lot of people will travel in the fall for, maybe a week of moose camp where everybody get together and go out in the bush and stay in a camp, or like myself and my family often will head down to southern Alberta and we'll stay in a hotel for a couple of days to hunt for mule deer. Clearly those kinds of things are not going to happen, or highly unlikely to be able to happen. So it'll change certainly how people, undertake their normal hunting practices for sure. And that'll be a big thing, traveling to a new town and then going into the local restaurant or the local grocery store is something that we all are supposed to be avoiding. Bringing what potentially could be a disease from one location to a small little town that might not have the same resources is something we really want to avoid. So those are the kinds of things that people really have to think about is how do we ensure that we're not going to cause a huge problem in some place you're not normally found in, and places that maybe don't have the resources to deal with the issues if they come up.
It's almost, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I was thinking it's almost like we're going to have to do a lot less traveling, a lot more regional angling and hunting.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what will happen. In the last couple of weeks here, I've been working with the University of Alberta. They're wanting to do a pilot study. Basically, they're looking for people who are going to hunt this spring and asking them to use a new app they had to track their movements to do an economic analysis. So I had volunteered to reach out to 25 people and who I knew were hunters, and I thought with no problem we'd be able to find 25 people in no time at all. But a good number of people that I would normally talk to get to do this study told me that they had changed their plans this year. They're not likely to go. Some people usually would travel and stay with family overnight on the weekends, and they're not going to be doing that this year. Others were, the people who would stay in hotels are not going to do that. So it's already impacting the spring hunt. If it stays until the fall, then I think it will certainly have a significant impact. But to be honest, if we're still under these restrictions by September, I think we're all going to have a lot more serious issues than our loss of hunting opportunities that we're going to have to deal with here in Alberta.
That's a great point. No, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of, the whole economy is going to be in big trouble, and we'll be just worrying about keeping everybody alive and well, not too worried about our recreational activities. So that's a good point.
Well, we may be at the point where there's a lot more people wanting to go hunting just to ensure everybody has some food in their freezer. So, that's a possibility out there too.
So, what about stocking lakes and that kind of stuff? Are you guys still planning on doing lake stocking this spring?
Yeah. So to date, there shouldn't be any issues with us getting stocking done. The hatcheries, both the provincial and the private hatcheries, have already got fish in the waters. They're growing them. So and the actual physical process of stocking is a one-person operation. So a truck will show up at the particular pond and attach the hose and open the valve, and out goes the fish. And so that can all be done without any issues with regard to COVID. So that will occur for sure. Really what the other big program we have when it comes to stocking is pheasant release program in the fall. We've looked at that. We've had problems getting pheasant chicks in this spring because we have a 4-H program where we have young people raising pheasant chicks from day olds for us. And we normally get them out of the States, but it turns out that at this point in time, they couldn't ship live animals across the border. I don't think that was necessarily an issue with any federal or state regulations. I think it was a matter of the carrier itself just decided at this point in time they weren't going to do it. They had other things they had to take care of, so it was a low priority. So we had to change where we got those runs. We were able to get around it, but at this point, really what's going to be impacted more than anything else is our ability to get out in the field with our field crews and do things like we're supposed to be doing creel surveys on some of the walleye lakes this year. I don't know if anybody has looked at the new fishing regulations, but there's a lot of opportunities this year for people to be able to catch walleye and keep them. A number of different slot limits have been put in place, and part of our job this year was to have crews out there to talk to anglers about it. How many fish are they catching, the sizes they're getting, those kinds of things. And unfortunately, at this point, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that. Obviously, the one issue of us having to put together a camp with 2 or 4 people in it, but also just the issue of having to talk to the general public and being within 2 meters for those conversations, those kinds of issues. So that kind of stuff is going to be impacted for sure.
Right. So speaking to that, how is the ACA doing with day-to-day activities? And obviously there's challenges. What kind of challenges do you foresee coming down the line, and how have you adjusted your course to try and deal with those and make sure that, people can still have those opportunities?
In March, we were okay. Things were fine, but, everything had just started, and realistically, we don't usually see a lot of people buying hunting and fishing licenses in March. April will sort of be our first test to see how this compares to last year. So if we end up having a significant hit to the fishing license sales because people, can't go or choose not to go because they're concerned about it, that's going to have an impact on us eventually. And so we'll, have to see what programs we can cut to try and save some money. But at this point, other than curtailing what we would normally do for our field work, we do a lot of work where biologists are off talking to landowners on a day-to-day basis, sitting down talking about habitat plans on their private land and those kinds of things. That stuff just can't happen face-to-face anymore. So although some of it can happen over the phone, it's not as efficient to do it that way. If you're going to talk to somebody about issues like what to do on your private land, it's always better to be able to look someone in the eye and get to know them much better that way. So those kinds of changes are going to happen for this year, but I think we can probably make it through. It's
been interesting to see how everybody's tried to adjust and make this okay and try to be a part of the solution and not part of the problem, right? Not trying to, like I said, find the loopholes or that kind of stuff. So, how do you think this is going to end up changing conservation efforts and hunting and angling in the future? Like when this is all over, assuming it all goes back to normal, some kind of normal. How are things going to change? What do you expect is going to be different?
Well, I think there could be a couple of things that might happen. One thing, I'm very concerned for a number of our smaller, our member group organizations in the province. So the Alberta Fish and Game Association, or Trout Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, the Alberta Hunter Education Instructor Associations, all those groups that make up ACA. This is hit right in the middle of their fundraising dinners. So a lot of these groups depend on fundraising dinners in February, March, April, into May to raise funds to run for the entire year. And of course, most of those got canceled. And so I think there's a significant risk that if the people who would normally support them at fundraising dinners aren't willing to go online and support them just simply through direct donations now, that we could see some losses of our conservation groups here in Alberta, and I'm sure across the country. It'll be the same issue across the country. But so that could be a big hit to the activities that occur in Alberta into the future if we lose some of these groups. So I really do hope people, where they can, still do support those groups and ensure that they can keep running. The other thing that I think might occur is I think we might see an uptick in the number of people who are interested in hunting and harvesting their own game. At this point, I don't want to be alarmist. I don't think there's a huge risk that there isn't going to be, beef in the supermarket next week. But there's now more and more people starting to think about it. Like, what if this happened or that happened? What would I do? And we certainly have seen an uptick in the number of people who have been interested in it. We've got our Harvest Your Own website that sort of is there for people who are interested in the idea of getting started hunting. And we've seen an uptick in the number of people going to that website to have a look at what does it take. And I know the Alberta Hunter Education Instructor Association has got a good number of people now looking at their online Hunter Ed course. So we might very well see coming out of this more people starting to look at including hunting as part of their lifestyle and the idea that they can harvest some of their own food and, potentially not feel as concerned about food security going forward. Now, I've yet to be able to harvest my own fruits and vegetables out there and get some out of my garden, but November is a bad time to try to harvest my vegetables out there. But I certainly have harvested all my meat. Hasn't been an issue. So.
Yeah. One kind of final thing I wanted to talk to you about was, do you think that this is that Do you think that people have started to recognize, and organizations have started to recognize, the value of community during this pandemic? And like, how do you think we can stick together but be apart during this whole thing and come out of this stronger on the other side?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. I think people are starting to recognize the value of a bunch of different things they've sort of taken for granted. I would suggest most people have, for the most part, taken nurses for granted for years. I would suggest nobody's taking nurses for granted right now. Hopefully that
truck drivers.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Or
teachers
at the Home Depot or the grocery store.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how long that sort of feeling of importance that we've placed on these positions lasts in the future. Is once we're past the crisis, do we forget about how important these people were and go back to status quo again? Or, do they get pushed up the ranks of importance in society as a whole? So I think that is one thing for sure. I also think a lot of people will start to, right now, certainly being stuck in the house, people have a lot more, placing a lot more importance for the concept of being outside and being able to enjoy the outdoors. And I would suggest that right now a lot of people are talking about, I sure would like to go for a hike in a park, or I sure would like to go fishing or hunting, or all those things that they've always had the chance to do, but maybe never have done or haven't done that often. Everybody's thinking about doing it now. And that's another one of those things that I would expect to see a spike immediately after restrictions being lifted. But how long that will last going forward is going to be interesting. Is it something that changes people's attitudes for all time, and they no longer will take being able to be outside for granted? And we'll see, Netflix will drop way off because everybody is outside all the time now, or, will we go back to our pre-COVID norms again, and people will basically take that idea of being able to get outside for granted again.
Yeah, hopefully, I would imagine we'll see a lot more thought going into stuff like this, I would assume. Yeah,
absolutely. At least for a few years anyways.
Yeah, exactly, till we all forget about it.
Yeah.
Have amnesia once again.
Yeah, well, it's very much like Alberta always is going to expand our diversify our economy every time there's an oil crash. But when the boom comes back, we seem to always head back to oil again. So,
yeah, a little bit of it's hard to pass up that quick buck.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just human nature, I think.
Well, yeah, exactly. Right. That dangling carrot is it's hard to pass up. So yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate you taking the time to come on, man. This was you said exactly kind of what was on my mind when I was thinking about people getting outside, the importance of nature, but also the importance of limiting that, right? I think I was listening to a podcast a little while ago. I forget which one it was, but they were talking about staying inside as much as possible. But when you wake up in the morning, you think, no, today is the day where I really just need to get that sun on my face. And I just need to get outside, and then sitting down, having a plan, and knowing that if you do drive out to your favorite trailhead or your favorite pond or whatever, and you get there and it's packed, that you have to be ready to just go home or do something else, and know that that's a possibility.
I think that is a key point, and it's something that people are not used to doing. That's exactly right. You get there and there's other people there. You have to be prepared to say, oh, well, someone else had the idea before me. I just got to go someplace else or go back home, and not sort of push your way into the crowds. And that's tough for a lot of people to do. I've already put the time in. I've driven the whole way here. I'm going to get to do my hike, but that's exactly where the issues will come in.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had to do that twice already, and it hurts my heart. I try to sit there in the car and I try to justify it, and my wife talks me out of it, and then we leave, and I go, yeah, that was a smart choice. That was the right decision. We all struggle with it, right? Like it's hard.
Well, I can tell you that we don't have many conservation sites that have actual trails on them, but the vast majority of the conservation sites we have don't have that many people walking on them. So if you want to take a look at the conservation sites we have available on our website we have 800 and some sites across the province, and I can just about guarantee you go there, you're going to be walking by yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would assume so too. Yeah. Well, this is great, man. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is really good. I think this will clear up some issues for people and hopefully provide a little bit of optimism, a little bit of insight. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Get outside. Do it. Go enjoy the outdoors. Collect your thoughts. Become one with nature. I'm losing my mind being stuck inside, and I'm getting outside as much as I can. But yeah, trying to do it ethically and morally has been a challenge. You know, trying not to overstep those weird lines that exist somewhere out there. It's hard. But yeah, let's get outside. Let's try and enjoy ourselves, try and reconnect with nature, try and just do what we can while also protecting the public good, you know? So get out there. Let's do it. So moving on, the next conversation you're going to have, like I said before, is with Ellen Macdonald, all about the university, the challenges they faced, how they dealt with learning, over the internet, teaching people over the internet. Testing was a weird one. What are they going to do come the fall? And maybe what does this pandemic mean for post-secondary in general? Like, how is this going to change after the pandemic's over? Maybe this changes the way we do post-secondary learning. I don't know. You're going to find out talking to Ellen. We're going to get her opinion on it. So here we go. Here's Ellen and I. When this all started in the middle of March there, what was the university's response? How did the response go? Was it chaotic? Was there a very measured and sudden response? Like, how did it? Because I mean, you've got 30,000 students or something like that, and I'm sure 5,000 or more faculty, and it's a big organization to try and shut down all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's really kind of remarkable to think about how it went and how quickly things changed that week in the middle of March, which seems like it was about a year ago, where, suddenly on, I think it was the Wednesday, they restricted to gatherings of 250 people or more. And already, campus is breaking that. We have some classes that have more than 250 students. So I think that was on Wednesday. And then the next day they announced that on Friday classes were suspended. So campus effectively shut down on that Friday, which I think was March 17th or something like that. And then by the following Tuesday, all classes were online. And that it still just completely blows my mind to think how we did that. And that was an unbelievable time period, trying to get supports in place for people and giving people, the technological tools and the, pedagogical guidance as to how they could move their course into remote delivery with literally 3 or 4 days notice, 2 of which was a weekend.
Yeah.
And it was amazing how smooth that transition went. Instructors were excellent. They rose to the challenge, and students were excellent. They had a very good attitude. They knew that this was, really exceptional circumstance and that it wasn't going to be ideal, but there was no whining from any of them really. And I had, literally 3 or 4 questions from instructors about how this would go. And then it just happened. And it was a real tribute to the excellent work and attitude of our professors and the cooperation of students. So that went pretty smoothly. And then, that was the first step. And then we started trying to address some of the issues, like how we were going to finish the term, how we were going to assess students when we couldn't have in-person exams. And, that was a very difficult process, going through what exactly that looked like, and instructors had to change, their assessment tools that they were planning to use when they couldn't have, a proctored final exam. And that was a lot of work. They put together other options to try and make sure that students, still stayed engaged. And I think, some students struggled to stay engaged. Some of them left campus and went back home, and they may not have had good access to internet or good computing facilities and whatnot. So I think it was challenging. It was for sure challenging for them. And then we made the decision to go ahead and move to credit, non-credit assessment for this term. And that was a big discussion because, and it was controversial. Some students wanted to still have the option to have letter grades, and some universities were providing that opportunity for students to choose between a letter grade or the credit, non-credit.
Right.
And
what is a credit, non-credit?
It just means that basically it's a pass-fail. So you've got a pass or a fail in the course with no letter grade. And, the thinking behind that is that, delivering some courses probably could have delivered letter grades perfectly fine. Courses that didn't have a final exam or where the vast majority of the work was already completed by the time this happened. But other courses, some students would be severely disadvantaged. So, like I said, they might have gone home and they wouldn't have access to computing facilities. Students that require accommodations for their exams because of physical disabilities or learning disabilities. All of those individuals would be disadvantaged, and probably that would have been reflected in a letter grade. And so the feeling that was for equity considerations, it'd be better to just put everybody on the same playing field. You passed or you didn't pass the course, and forget about whether you got a C or an A. So that was a difficult decision, and it involved a difficult conversation and a diversity of opinions. But that's the way we went, and I think I'm comfortable with that, and I think everybody realizes it's not an ideal situation, and some people will be unhappy, and in fact probably will be disadvantaged. Students that were trying to get their grades up for, to apply to a program, and they were really nailing it this last term, and they won't get, an advantage of all those A's on their transcript. But we just have to hope that programs like from across Canada, universities all across Canada were in conversations about this and making agreements about how they were going to treat grades from this term going forward for admission to graduate programs or professional programs. So, that's where we're at in terms of the teaching component. And of course, field school was canceled. So we normally have a 3-week-long field school that would have started this just past weekend up in Lac La Biche, and that was canceled. And, it's very disappointing to all of us and to the students that were planning to take it. I'm hoping we'll be able to figure out some kind of replacement for those students towards, the end of August, beginning of September. But it really depends on what the public health guidelines and restrictions are at that time. But I'm very frightened to think about having a double cohort of students trying to take field school next spring. So I'm really going to try and figure out a solution to avoid that, because I just can't even imagine how we would organize that. So
I don't know if the town of Lac La Biche has enough liquor.
Yeah, for 160 students. Yeah, that would be that.
Yeah, well, that's awesome though to hear about. I think that decision that you were talking about, as far as pass fail kind of situation, I think that makes sense. That was going to be one of my main concerns around students who or maybe are less fortunate or don't have the capacity to do stuff at home, right? Like there's a lot of students they're maybe still living at home with grandparents or family, or they have children, or they have they all have to work, they all have to go to school, and I think that's the right decision, like you said, just to make sure that nobody's left behind because they happen to have a more complicated home life than other people, right? So I think that's the right way to go. Although
exactly, you don't know if they were caring for a family member who was ill, or if they had to self-isolate, or if they were, dealing, with, if they had a family, they had kids suddenly that were home from school, all those things that you said, that could be disadvantageous to some groups. And you wouldn't want them to, to have a transcript that looked like their performance was subpar when really that was explained by all this variety of other things that were out of their control. So
no kidding. So how about you mentioned that you haven't heard any whining and everybody's been kind of on, like, everyone's been on the ball as far as faculty, and the students haven't been complaining much. Everyone's been pretty understanding. Speaking to that now, like now we're a month later, we're end of April here, over a month later. How has the atmosphere changed?
Yeah, we're trying to stay connected as much as possible, but it's very difficult. And, everybody feels very isolated, not being able to see people in person. And, and now I think students are, concerned about their prospects for the summer. Many have lost their jobs for the summer.
Yeah.
Because of, things have been shut down, and it's still not entirely clear to what extent they'll be able to take advantage of this federal government program. So I think that was announced last week, a financial assistance program for students. So I hope that it will help them out. But, money isn't the same as experience, and all of them, they need a job for financial reasons, but more importantly, they wanted those jobs so that they could continue to develop their skills and personal attributes towards their career aspirations. And so to me, that's even the greater loss this summer, is that they won't be able to get that experience. And
yeah,
I think that's, I really feel for our students, and, what I know how stressful it has been for us as instructors and researchers. And I can only imagine as a student, all the uncertainty and how they, the challenges that they faced in finishing off their classes, and now trying to face what's going to happen for them for the summer in terms of employment and their, building towards their career aspirations. I really feel for them. And if I had a message for them, it would be that we are thinking about them every day, and we're here for them, and we're going to be here when they come back in the fall and try and give them the best possible experience that we can, and ensure that they still come out of our program really with a quality experience despite this challenging period now.
Yeah. No, and it's heartwarming to hear that, and to hear you say that, and to hear that the university is adapting so well to try to accommodate students in whatever way they possibly can, right? Because exactly with the summer jobs too, right? How important those are to people that are, I remember leaving university on my last dime kind of thing, right? And luckily the next day I started work and I was
you're good to go.
I'm good to go, right? But it was paycheck to paycheck. Like, being a student is not, you know what I mean? You don't have a ton of savings usually. Most people don't.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to recognize all that. And it sounds like the university as a whole has done a pretty good job of trying to, fill those gaps, and where people might be, less fortunate, might not be able to hold on. So that's good. That's really good to hear. I mean, in this time that's so difficult for everybody, it's nice to hear people thinking about other people.
Yeah. And I know probably nobody wants to hear this, but we are actually already planning for what it's going to look like if we can't have in-person classes in the fall, or certainly we can't have all in-person classes in the fall. And of course, we don't know yet if that will be true, but I'm having a hard time right now thinking that we're going to be back to business as usual with 30,000 students on campus in September.
Yeah.
So we're prioritizing classes, looking at which ones would require or would really, really need in-person instruction versus ones that could continue online. So we're already thinking that far ahead and planning if we have to put resources into putting courses together, or organizing lab materials and lab content to deliver to students if we have to do a bunch of that remotely. So we are planning ahead, even for, a future that none of us really want to contemplate, that we wouldn't be in person in the fall. But I think it's necessary, because I think it's probably realistic that we won't yet be back to business as usual 100% by September. So
that's kind of the gist that I've gathered as well, is that it's looking like a long haul. I don't know if anybody knows how long it's going to take for them to develop a vaccine or do whatever it is they need to do to get us all back to our lives. But have you guys put any thought, like speaking to kind of making the playing field more fair based off people's homes, lives, situations, and stuff like that? Have you put in any thought to, like, maybe slowing down the pace of, or slowing down the amount of work that's expected of them? Because I think I can't imagine very many people have the same capacity at home as they do going to the university, which is a dedicated place to do that work and to, and more importantly, really not even just a place to do the work, but a mental place. Like I know for myself, I found when I'm at home, I'm in a different gear than when I'm at the university, right? I was same as when you go to work, you're thinking differently. It's a different space and there's different people challenging you. And like most of what I got from university was from those classroom discussions and those debates and those, people forcing you to think differently by calling you on stuff. Like that's just as important as, or I would argue even more so than actually writing an essay or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges if we're going to be delivering online in the fall is that, we want to do it in a more creative way than we did when we had 3 or 4 days notice to make it happen, right? So, it's possible for an instructor to sit in a chair and go blah, 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 blah with their Zoom meeting, which is okay, right? But it's not the same, like you said, as that classroom experience that can be interactive and whatnot. And so I think we want to try and put some effort into doing this in a more creative way and a more effective way to get that kind of real engaged experience. And there's ways to do that, but it's work to do that. So we have to get on it now and start working on it now so that we can provide that better experience if we're really talking about, launching into the fall term with a bunch of these courses delivered online. We want to be able to do it in the best way possible. So that's why we need to start planning now.
Yeah. How about enrollment? Like, are you guys concerned about, the uncertainty and all this, and people are going to have less money coming out of this? Economic activity is going to be at an all-time low, as we know. So I have to imagine that's going to drastically impact the university down the line. What kind of steps have been taken there? Can you speak to that at all?
The numbers that I heard so far is that our applications for admission are up slightly from previous years.
Oh, good.
And I think, there's two things at play. Like you said, when economic times are hard, sometimes students, people can't afford to go to university. On the other hand, sometimes when, people lose their jobs, they think, well, maybe it's a good time to go back to school, which I had always been thinking of doing. So my own nephew got laid off from his job due to COVID. And the next day he came home and said, can you help me apply to university? So
there you go.
And he's 20, right? He's kind of been figuring himself out what he wants to do. And so that was the impetus for him to say, okay, yeah, maybe it's time that I do that now because this other job has fallen through and I don't know when it's going to be back on stream. So our application numbers are up a little bit. I've heard.
This is for AILS, right? This is for your faculty?
Yeah, in AILS. So, hopefully our numbers will be good. We want to keep up our number of students in the program and, that's positive, but we'll see how things pan out and how many actually show up. And the whole international student thing is really unclear because it depends on whether those students can actually travel here or whether we'll be able to figure out a good way to continue to teach to them, even if they aren't physically in Canada. So,
yeah, no, sounds like you guys are thinking about all of it for sure. So, kind of changing gears a little bit here. What about like the academia side, like the actual research side of things? How has that, obviously I know the capacity to go into the field and to collaborate is decreased massively, but like how has research been affected and how do you think this will affect, just progress in that sense?
Well, I think for sure some research projects are going to slow down and are going to take longer to complete. We've had a process in place to assess whether research was considered essential or not and what could go on campus and what could be done safely while adhering to, public health protocols. We don't want to be, have an outbreak on campus for sure. So we've had fairly strict guidelines about that while still realizing that there are some research projects that would it would just be devastating to stop them. They'd lose valuable samples, valuable plant material. They would lose 2 or 3 years of prior research investment. So those are left to go on. And a lot of research, data analysis and writing and things like that, that can all go on remotely. Students can be writing their theses remotely. So that can all happen, but the actual, lab facility research is for sure slowed down a lot. And then the field research, as I said, is really an unknown now. When we get a guideline, a public health, it's not a directive, but a public health recommendation not to travel to rural areas of Alberta. Well, all our fieldwork happens in rural areas in Alberta. And so we're working through that now with a process where people can apply to continue their field research and describe why it's essential and how they will ensure, that they don't cause any public health concerns or risks with their research. So we're doing lots of things. We're saying, okay, yeah, you have to carry extra gas so you won't have to stop at a gas station or a store when you're in rural Alberta. And, if you can do it in day trips, that's better. And if you can't do it in day trips, how are you going to ensure that you minimize interactions? Because we don't want people traveling to rural communities and then taking the virus there, particularly those remote areas or, like the small communities, Indigenous communities and whatnot. That would be, worst possible outcome to, have researchers inadvertently bring the virus to those communities that really don't have the capacity to deal with an outbreak. So we want to be very, very mindful of our responsibility to all the other citizens of Alberta in terms of, doing our part to adhere to, the public health protocols and directives. Mm-hmm. So we have to balance that with, with the real situation that some of our research can be done with essentially no risk. And it's still really important to keep it going. The agriculture and environmental industries in Alberta have been declared essential, and our research fits into that realm. And many of our projects are very applied, so they're producing important knowledge and results for our partners. And we want to try and make that continue to go forward as much as possible, as long as it's safe, for the participants, the students that are doing that research or the PIs, whoever's involved in the research, and then also for anyone that they will encounter when they go out to these locations. So whether that's, a gas station attendant or, our partners at a company that they might interact with, we have to make sure that it's safe for everyone. So that's what we're trying to balance.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a lot. You guys have a lot on your plate. So I appreciate it. Yeah. It's the complexity of it all. And I think there is a way to do some of this safely and ethically, right? And you're not putting, the public health at risk. So how do you make sure of that? Right. Especially with all the unknowns up in the air. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate the difficulty of it. And I don't envy you. To say the least, but at the same time, I really appreciate it.
I spend every day in endless meetings about these things, and then every once in a while, I find some time to finish writing a paper myself, and that's very nice. Yeah, that's what I look forward to try and just say, okay, I'm going to take half a day and just work on a paper and try and get it out. And that feels very rewarding and tangible. So.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I feel like, and it's amazing how important it is in this day, this time, to find that fulfillment kind of role, right? Like I feel like we're all just kind of holding on to sanity and just trying to maintain some kind of feeling of normalcy and just feeling of connectedness and not trying to lose our mind, right? So
yes, exactly. Yeah.
So it's when you can find those little areas of fulfillment or happiness or whatever, it means a lot. So I think I feel for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have to do the things that you love. So I love to be in the forest. So even though I can't really go out to the forest, or I don't feel like I should be going out to the forest, at least I live in a city that has lots of green spaces, and I live close to a ravine where I can go walking, and that's very nice and very therapeutic, I find, to be able to go out in the evening, especially now that it's getting nicer. The weather's nice outside, just to go out. And on the weekend, we just got takeout dinner and had a picnic supper in the river valley. And it was such a treat.
Yeah.
Just to, hang out with the family and look at the river, and look at the forest along the river. And it's very nice to be able to, and that's the simple things in life that you can really appreciate now.
Isn't it ridiculous? I feel the same way. The things that I used to take for granted, as far as, the nature that we do have here in Edmonton in the river valley and stuff. You know what I mean? I used to kind of poo-poo it and go, whatever. It doesn't really do anything for me. But now it's everything, right? Even just sitting in my backyard, I got, a couple of big spruce trees and a bunch of birds flying around. That's become my haven, right? I sit back there with a coffee in the morning and just try to soak it all in, because that's all the nature I'm going to get today, right? So
exactly.
It's amazing how this really points out how important and how we take for granted the little things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird time. And I mean, as far as hardships go, sure, we all have to stay home, but there's past generations that have had to go to war or whatever. So we got it pretty good.
There's far worse things than being stuck at home with Netflix, but
it's still, it plays a toll on the mind, right?
Yeah, it does.
It's challenging. So, have you guys, has the university put much thought into how this is going to change? I mean, right now, I know you guys are just putting out fires and just trying to move on to the fall and kind of just trying to hold on to what you got and try and make everything work, I'm sure. But have you guys thought about how this is going to change academia permanently? How has it been reflected all on that? How we're going to move forward?
So. Yes, I think some of the things that have happened probably will cause us to think about some more permanent changes in the way we do business. So I think maybe people realized that remote teaching isn't quite as challenging as they thought. And I suspect that a lot of instructors will do a lot more in terms of providing opportunities for students to join their classes remotely now that they know how to do it in a relatively easy way. Mm-hmm. So I think we'll do more of that and more online courses than we have in the past. I think the other thing that people will probably realize is that you can effectively interact with people without being in person. And I would still say that I don't think it's always as effective to participate remotely, but so many conferences were canceled because of this, and some of them decided to go online instead. And I've often thought that scientists flying around the world to conferences, it's expensive, it takes time, and it obviously has a huge greenhouse gas footprint. And I wonder if it isn't time for us to rethink that a bit and say maybe we should think about how we can have conferences remotely and interact that way. And if that couldn't be essentially as effective or almost as effective and at much, much less cost in terms of dollar figures and people's time, and also, the environmental costs of all that travel. So I suspect there might be, this will be a paradigm shift in the way some of those things are done in the future. And we'll see people thinking about these in a very different way, and probably some very different models of how things are going to work in the future. Yeah.
No, I could see that. I mean, we're in a new age now, right? Where the technology working as well as it does, and it makes sense. And we were talking earlier about with the recognition of that value of community. I know as individuals, I think we all recognize the value of seeing colleagues and seeing friends and going to the restaurant or whatever, right? Going for a walk with people, Do you think the university has recognized that as an institution and maybe has recognized the huge importance of community and the value of creating a culture that is, a culture of care? Do you think there's been a recognition of the importance of protecting, that supportive culture that the university has?
I think so, yeah. And I think the supportive culture of the university has really, the supportive culture and the sense of community that we have at the university has really helped us survive this so far. So people have pitched in, everyone has done their best to try and create a good solution. Our students and their experience and what they get out of this term has really been front and center of our minds through all the decisions we've made to try and make sure that our students were not disadvantaged in any way and that we did our best possible thing that we could for them under these difficult circumstances. And everyone has really come together with that. It's been really, in my opinion, quite remarkable, the positive attitude that people have had and the, okay, let's just do this together attitude that they'll have. And I think that just highlights the strength of the community we are here as academics and our focus on our students. Yeah. And I think, if we didn't realize how important that was before, we certainly realize it now, that that's where our strength is, and that needs to be a core value for us going forward. Yeah.
No, that's awesome to hear. I'm glad to hear that. I would assume so. I just, you wonder. Yeah, it's
we haven't turned on ourselves yet.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's weird times are coming still, right? Like we were talking, I don't know if we've seen the end of this yet. Like I think we might be in this for a lot longer than we want to be, but anyways, it's good to hear now that we still have that optimism and that we're recognizing that value and we're trying to maintain the course as much as possible and see opportunity where opportunity arises from this hardship, right?
Yeah. So try and, take this difficult time and learn some things from it and use that to be better when we come out the other side.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Yeah, well, this is perfect. I appreciate you making the time to come on here and talk about this difficult subject and the the confusingness and the unknowingness is definitely overwhelming at times. So I appreciate you getting your words out there for people to hear.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. And I'm happy to share the story of what we've gone through here. And I know every sector across the economy and every household has had their severe challenges, and as difficult as it is, some way that commonality of those challenges brings us together. So I think it's nice to be able to share these stories.
It is, right? Like there is something about that, the shared trauma of this whole thing, how the whole world is going through this.
Yeah, it brings people together. Yeah. We can talk to colleagues, and one kind of touching thing was that some of our partners in China that send us undergraduate students, we're sending messages in the last couple of weeks that they're coming out the other side now and things are getting back to normal. And they were sending messages of, we feel, we know where you are now. We've been there, and just hang in there and things will get back to normal. And we're thinking about you, and we're still here to be your partner, and we're still planning to send students to you this fall. And so it was really nice to hear those kind of words from somebody that is coming out the other side of this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I can't even imagine. Yeah. It's exactly when nobody knows what the other side of this looks like. So it's good to hear people that are closer to that than us that are, they haven't completely lost their minds and eaten each other. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. I hope you like that. I hope you're all doing okay out there. I know it's been a struggle for everybody, and it's been a weird time. Just keep doing what you're doing. Get outside when you can, when it's safe to do so. Try and just, I don't know. We're all in this together, I guess. So there's some, there's some community in that, knowing that we're all in this together and no one's left out. It's a lot of common experience, that's for sure. So take it easy, everybody. The next episode coming out in 3 weeks, we'll be back to the normal kind of pace of things, back into environmental management, and that sort of stuff. So see you guys then. Take it easy. Keep your stick on the ice.